And you got to deal with this climate change issue. And I know that, there are some people who think climate change is a hoax. It ain't a hoax.
I think the climate change issue is very complicated. And I think, did you see the Washington Post piece that they wrote where they did this long-term view? Essentially, they found that we're in a cooling period. Scientists have captured the Earth's climate change over the last 485 million years. Here's a surprising place we stand now. So look at the far end of that graph, and you see we're in a cooling period.
Well, I'm not sure.
The climate change hoax is finally being revealed, and as the power of the environmental leftists is slowly being stripped away by the Trump administration, of course it's going to cause the Democrats to break out in even more and more of a panic. However, Lee Zeldin ain't going to have any of it as he schools CNN's Kasie Hunt on this exact same topic. But before we get to these clips, don't forget to like and comment on this video so we break through the algorithms. Here we go.
It's called the endangerment finding. It's a landmark scientific determination that planet-warming pollution from fossil fuels endangers human health. And since 2009, it's formed the bedrock for the EPA's ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. But that's set to all change after the Trump administration announced plans to reverse that ruling, effectively gutting the federal government's ability to combat climate change. Joining me now is EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, who has been traveling the country in part to promote this move. Mr. Administrator, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. I do want to start with the fundamental question that's at the heart of all this. I mean, do you accept the overwhelming scientific consensus that these greenhouse gas emissions are the biggest drivers of man-made climate change?
First, it's worth pointing out that all 8 or so images that you just posted on the screen have nothing to do with this week's announcement. What was the 2009 endangerment finding had to do with regards to mobile sources vehicles. This week's proposal to rescind the 2009 endangerment finding was with regards to mobile sources vehicles. CNN's been using a lot of photos where they show smokestacks of stationary sources like power plants. That's not what we proposed. Now, going back to 2009, the science that they were reviewing included both optimistic to pessimistic scenarios. To reach the 2009 endangerment finding, they relied on the most pessimistic views of the science. The great news is that a lot of the pessimistic views of the science in 2009 that was being assumed ended up not panning out. Hey, that's great. We can rely on 2025 facts as opposed to 2009 bad assumptions. The other thing, too, is that at EPA, we don't just get to creatively make the law whatever we want it to be. The Supreme Court ruled in Loper Bright, overturning the Chevron doctrine, West Virginia versus EPA, Michigan versus EPA, that agencies like the EPA can't just use vague language in statute and try to make it be whatever we want it to be. The major policy doctrine also says that when you're going to reach something like an endangerment finding and then have trillions of dollars of regulation, that's something that should be decided by our elected members of Congress in passing statute. And if you don't mind, the 2009 endangerment finding, while it's simply summed up now as saying carbon dioxide endangers public health and welfare, that's not what they did back in 2009. They had a lot of mental leaps. They say carbon dioxide, when mixed with a whole bunch of other well-mixed gases, in some cases not even emitted from mobile sources, they say that it contributes to global climate change. Doesn't say causes, contributes. How much they don't say, but it's north of zero, not much more than zero.
So you're sounding pretty skeptical
change
of this overall scientific consensus that these greenhouse gas emissions are the overwhelming man-made climate change driver.
That might be your way to try to twist my words, but what I'm saying is that we get our power at EPA from what the law states, and the Supreme Court in recent cases have been very clear. So what I was just describing with all the mental leaps used in the 2009 endangerment finding, Section 202 of the Clean Air Act doesn't allow all of these different mental leaps, as the Supreme Court made clear in recent years. So I'm not going to get creative with the law. We're going to read the plain language. And if Section 202 of the Clean Air Act gets amended by Congress, then we'll follow that new law.
So, sir, first of all, I don't want to put words in your mouth or twist your words or anything like that. I just was trying to clarify kind of where you were coming down on my initial question.
Did you notice the look on Kasie Hunt's face as Lee Zeldin just smashed her gotcha question? Okay, yeah, this 2009 study was about overall climate emissions, and they used the worst possible projections from the study to make all of their conclusions, and of course they weren't definite in their language. May contribute, but of course we all know this is a bunch of garbage because none of the projections from these leftists have come true. Not one, right? Go back to 2000 with Al Gore and his inconvenient truth. Guess what? Florida is still above water, all right? So they're always wrong consistently, but of course, just to put the nail in the coffin, Lee Zeldin says, well, guess what? We're not going against even all commissions with this change from the EPA. We're going against the auto regulations that were put into place by the EPA, right? That's it. Because we're no longer going to have the whole nation held hostage by California's radical rules on the environment. Okay, that's all that's really happening here. And by the way, as I've mentioned, the radical left have been wrong on every single one of their predictions about the climate. Back when I was a child, I remember the big scare being global cooling. We were facing the next ice age. Then fast forward a few years, and then it's global warming. And then when that didn't quite happen, fast forward a few years, and now it's climate change because apparently all of the leftist scientists can't agree on what's happening, but they still want those federal dollars to fund all of their pet projects. But also we have to remember that the Supreme Court actually smacked down the EPA because they were actually making rules and regulations far beyond their purview as unelected officials with zero accountability to anybody. They were essentially just stealing power from Congress. And the Supreme Court had to step in and say, not so fast. That's not what this nation is all about. And I also want to point out the language that Kasie Hunt is using, right? There's this scientific consensus. Where have we heard that before? Oh, just a couple of years ago during the pandemic, right? It was a scientific consensus. Everyone agreed that this is what we had to do. Only just like back then, all of this stuff was completely wrong. It was all based on faulty studies. And guess what? That consensus doesn't sound so smart now, does it? Now, just to be clear, do I think we should have clean air and water? Absolutely. Do I think we should be out there littering the earth? No, I don't. I think we should be good stewards of this planet. However, we should not be hamstringing ourselves, the American citizens, the American economy, the American country, simply for some crazy predictions that never panned out. And that's why the Trump administration has turned the Republican Party into the party of common sense, because we're not going to stand by and no longer fight this garbage that's being pushed on us. And it's great to see Lee Zeldin as the head of the EPA really rein all of this stuff in. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me. Do you like t-shirts? Of course you do. And now you can support the channel by buying an Angry Teacher t-shirt designed by me, Angry Teacher. So if you like America, if you like freedom, if you like liberty, then go ahead and click the link in the description where all designs, of course, are 100% mother approved. So enjoy yourself and find something you like today.